All right, welcome everyone to today's Coaches and Business Real Talk session. I am so thrilled to see so many of you here today, coaches from all different stages of business, coming together for some real, raw, and honest conversations about what it truly takes to build and scale a successful coaching business. Let's kick things off with a quick check-in here. Feel free to drop your answers to chat. Where are you tuning in from? How long have you been in business? You just getting started? Are you 1 to 3 years in your journey or 3 years plus? Type in the chat to share with us here. What's one word that describes how you're feeling about your business right now? What's one word to describe how you're feeling about your business right now? Type in the chat to share with us here. So for those who are new to me, I'm Diana YK Chan, a business growth strategist and a former career coach with over 14 years of experience helping professionals and coaches build thriving businesses. I've been recognized as a 2-time top personal branding expert in Canada, an 11-time LinkedIn learning instructor, and a 7-time UN speaker with a global network of entrepreneurs and leaders. But beyond the titles, here's what drives me the most. I'm really passionate about empowering coaches to unlock their potential, transform their businesses, and create lasting impact. I'm here to spark both financial and personal transformation because I truly believe that you can build a business that aligns with the life you truly want. Throughout my journey, I've helped clients scale from 0 to 7-figure businesses within 6 months, achieve consistent 20K plus months and 6-figure launches, transition from one-on-one coaching to scalable group programs, diversify income streams through coaching, speaking, licensing, and brand deals, and achieving 2x to 10x business growth with a 5x to 20x ROI. But what I'm most passionate about is building communities, fostering deep connections, and helping coaches like you unlock new opportunities, which is exactly why I created the Coaches in Business Real Talk, to provide a safe space where we can strip away the highlight reels and have real conversations about the highs and lows and everything in between. Because running a coaching business can feel lonely, but you don't have to do it alone when you have a community that gets it. Okay, so if you're excited, type in a +1 here today. Before we dive in, I have a few announcements that I want to share here is that we now have a free Coaches and Business in community. This is where you can also continue these conversations, network with like-minded coaches, share resources, and access replays of sessions like today. So Victoria will also help us to drop in the link here if you'd like to join that. And then tomorrow, we also have a bonus session from 12 to 1 Eastern Time, a workshop on From Fear to Flow, releasing your limiting beliefs to open doors to more sales and clients with my dear friend, Jess Smith. She's a certified EFT tapping practitioner, where you're going to learn how to release your fears and limiting beliefs so that you can step into the next best version of yourself and reach the next level in your business. All right, so now let's get to the part where you're all here for, shall we? Each month, I bring in inspiring guests who have been here where you are, faced similar challenges, and grown through them. Today, I'm especially excited because we have someone who's not only an incredible entrepreneur, but also a very dear friend of mine, Tiffany Uman. We met on LinkedIn in December 2020, and now since then have met up multiple times, 7 times in person throughout the years. Our husbands and the kids love hanging out with each other. Tiffany is a career strategist and a LinkedIn learning instructor with over 1 million learners and has built an audience of 300,000 followers and an active email list, all while scaling her business to 7 figures, where she's helped thousands of clients since 2019. But what I admired most about Tiffany isn't just the impressive numbers. For me, it's really her growth and possibilities mindset. She turns every challenge into an opportunity to improve. Commitment to working on her business, not just in it, which has been key to her long-term success. Owning her uniqueness, staying true to her strengths, and building a business on her terms. I've had the privilege of supporting Tiffany through her business growth journey. She attended my business mastermind retreat in Cancun twice in 2023 and 2024. After just her first mastermind, she had her first 6-figure launch. And just a year later, she scaled her business to seven figures. Woohoo! That's amazing. And I want to share this inspiring story in hopes to inspire you of what's possible for you here. I'm already having goosebumps to share you this story of believing yourself. It's about taking bold action here. So back in November 2022, Tiffany and I met in person for the very first time during a one-on-one mastermind weekend. I invited her to come meet with me. We talked about her vision for her business. And I remember this moment so vividly. During our one-on-one, we had these post-it notes filled with her goals that felt so big, scary, almost too bold to say it out loud. And on those notes, I actually wrote this down for her during our conversation was number one, to build a kick-ass team. Number two, launch a world-class program. Number three, scale to a seven-figure business. Big dreams that seemed out of reach at that time. Fast forward to last summer in July 2024, I visited Tiffany and her family in Montreal. She shared those exact post-it notes with me in her office. Each goal checked off. Kick-ass team, world-class program, seven-figure business. All achieved in just a year and a half. Oh, I'm getting emotional just sharing this, Tiff. And I just want to say I am so proud of you because you're truly living it. So what you can expect today is that Tiffany's going to peel back the curtain and share her behind the scenes journey. We're going to break it into three parts so that we can have a discussion here. Part one, we're going to talk about the early years when revenue was inconsistent. A lot of you probably can relate to this, how inconsistent, that yo-yo type of revenue there. Part two, we're going to move into how she made the shift to consistent six-figure launches after attending my mastermind. And then part three is how she stepped into the CEO role to scale her business to seven figures. So if you guys are excited, type in a +1. This is meant to be interactive conversation. So drop your questions in the chat, engage with us on what you're learning, your big ahas. If you want to speak on camera, click the raise your hand and the react icon there. Show us some love and support because we see you if you're on camera there. Okay. And let us know what's one thing you're hoping to learn from Tiffany today. So welcome, Tiffany.
Thanks, Diana. I feel like I'm smiling ear to ear after that one. Thank you for the kind words. It really
Welcome,
means a lot.
welcome. We are so excited to have you here today. So let's set the stage, shall we? The part one, the early years of navigating the inconsistent revenue and building that foundation. What did your business model look like? The offers? How did you begin to build your brand online?
Oh, yeah. My God, it feels like a long time ago, and yet it feels like it was yesterday. Well, I started from zero. So if anyone can relate, that's where I was, very much at the beginning of 2020. I had just given birth to my second child. I was on maternity leave, and I had sort of two choices of which way I wanted that maternity leave to go. And I always had really envisioned building something, and it amounted year after year after year in my corporate work. And that's where I said, you know what, I think this is the year to try to make this happen. So when you talk about building a brand, Diana, like there was no brand. I was very private on social media before. I still am very much from like a personal level, but knowing that I wanted to use that to build the business from the ground up, I had to get out of my comfort zone. And so that very early phase was very much about beta testing, working with initial clients for free, getting a sense of the way I wanted to support them, and also kind of getting the validation if that's how they want to be supported. Is there a real market for this? And just for context, if anyone doesn't know the focus of my coaching business, we really focus on unlocking more growth, leadership, influence, impact within your career, especially with a lot of soft skill mastery within that to bring out your best in your workplaces, whether for internal opportunities or new opportunities elsewhere. So that was really the premise at the outset of building that from the ground up and learning a lot from the things that have worked well for me in my own career within L'Oreal and taking that more on a global stage. So I wasn't quite sure where to start or how to build that, but I just started. And I think that's sometimes like the hardest part of just doing the thing and staying very consistent. For anyone here who knows what it's like having young children at home during a pandemic, homeschooling, building a business at the same time, that was pretty much my reality for 2020. So I was scraping for every hour in the day I could get, but I felt so energized by my why to help people build incredible careers for themselves and succeed in the way that they really wanted to. So that's really what got that going, starting with beta clients for free, shifting shortly after that, like a month and a half after that, into my first paid one-on-one clients. And then my initial kind of revenue goal was to ideally hit like a 10K month by the end of 2020. But we ended up hitting that by like early August. And at that point, that was the cue for me of possibly shifting from one-to-one into more group coaching. Still with the similar program and structure that I created for one-on-one clients in that year. But I was finding I was repeating myself often for each one-on-one client, and saying the same things over and over. And so that was a bit of the aha moment of like, maybe I could like better package that so I can actually spend more time coaching and supporting them, not just teaching. And then that's where by November of 2020, I officially launched the first cohort of continue to stay to this day, my flagship coaching program. That's evolved with time, but that's kind of how that first year panned out. And it got to the end of the year where I had built enough momentum and growth that surpassed my expectations, that actually gave me the confidence to step away from my full-time role in January of 2021.
Perfect. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that for context here. So I want to ask this, and this is something I commonly hear, is when revenue wasn't consistent, what were some of the doubts and fears you experienced? How did you stay motivated when results weren't coming in as quickly as you hoped?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it ultimately was a bit of a numbers game at the beginning. I think it's really key to understand what your metrics are and reverse engineer from that. So, when I was starting out, I didn't really know what any of those metrics were in terms of sales calls and conversions and all of that. But with time and doing several months of one-on-one, I got a good sense of how many calls I would need to have on the calendar in a given week or a given month to be able to convert at a certain rate. And if I wanted to make a certain amount of, revenue in a given month, it was all just working backwards from the numbers. So that's where the content and building the personal brand really was super important because even pretty much to this day, we are now starting to explore paid advertising, but essentially up to this point, it's been all built organically from the beginning. So that was where building content and being consistent and having resources that can give people a gateway into what we do and why we do it and how we can support them was a really good mechanism of getting people into our ecosystem, if you will, booking those calls, converting those calls, and then welcoming them into our one-on-one program. And then when we started shifting Diana to more of the group structure, that's where we started using more of a launch model as
Mhm.
opposed to just the calls alone. It was kind of paired calls plus a bigger launch and workshop or webinar or masterclass, whatever you want to call it. That was more like group coaching and selling that could bring more people in at one time. But I found that helped a lot with the inconsistency. For us, it wasn't so much like one month was crazy and then another month was really low and then another month was crazy. It was more getting like the numbers down so that it was consistently building. And I think knowing that early on and having a business background, it helped me understand what needed to happen to get to those numbers in a pretty consistent way. But of course, I think everyone's going to have those moments in their business where you probably get a sense of what your biggest revenue drivers are. And it could be really helpful doubling down on those if they work well for you so that there is more consistency, there is more ongoing recurring revenue. And also thinking about how you can have more recurring revenue from your existing clients, not just always chasing new.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to hear from the audience here, how many of you are considering to transition from one-on-one to group? Like type in that, like transition or touch that in group here. Because I guess a what big question I ask hear a lot actually right now is like, how do I transition? And there's a lot of fears like of, am I not going to be able to give enough value? Am I able to get enough results? How did you prepare for that shift, like mentally and strategically from one-on-one
Yeah.
to the group? And my other question is, what were the keys to designing a group program that consistently deliver results?
Yeah. Okay, let's take the first part. That's a really good question. I think the shift of the one-on-one into group, in my case anyways, was a lot of like false limiting beliefs that I had. I was under the impression that, everyone wanted one-on-one and it's the most high touch, it's the most personalized. So like, why would people want to be in a group setting when they can have one-on-one? But of course, I think as we can all relate, for anyone who does one-on-one, it's just that constant exchange for time and money. And like, it's very hard to scale one-on-one. And I was at a point of thinking, well, I don't want to do that version forever. I want to scale this thing. And so it was a lot of limitations of how other people would receive it, being my target clients. Would they actually be happy about it? Would they want that? And so, not that everyone has to go this route, but what I particularly did, as I mentioned, I shifted to my group program in November of 2020. In September of 2020, I actually tested a very intimate small group of just two people to get the feel of coaching multiple people at once. And it was a really fun little intimate group. It was already merging more to the structure I'd want to do with more members at once. And it helped me get a sense of like what that dynamic was. And to my pleasant surprise, there was actually a lot of positives that came from it that wasn't just about, the one-on-one coaching. They were connecting with each other. They were feeling like, wow, I'm not alone. And just like the people here, right, Diana? Like I think it's amazing to feel that level of connectivity. And, because we focus on supporting corporate professionals, there's a lot of things that are really hard to talk about, like in your workplace. Like you can't have these types of conversations with your boss. You never know who that's going to get back to. So to create that safe space for them, I think was my big aha of like, okay, I think I was just like holding myself back unintentionally, thinking that people don't want this when it could actually be very favorable. So it was a huge mindset shift, like most importantly, in doing that. And then your second question, Diana, just remind me the second part.
Yeah, how did you prepare to deliver great results in the client experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always knew when I transitioned into group that I still wanted a pretty high level of one-on-one. And even to this day, there's an extensive amount of one-on-one coaching support at a daily level for our clients. But I never wanted that part to be lost. I simply wanted to add the community factor and the benefits of being amongst each other and showing the value in that. So that was kind of the frame of mind that I had of what do I need to actually adjust? Was it the content? Was it the structure? Is it the delivery? And what it ended up being more was the delivery, both in the coaching dynamic and the way the content was presented. So when I was doing one-on-one, there was no content portal. There was very much like doing it live on the sessions with me. Whereas once we moved into group, I wanted to professionalize it. And so that's where I took several months filming content, producing the content, putting it into my content portal where they could have that suite of resources. And we've continued to build on it and refine it and adjust it, update it, all of that to this day. But that really helped. So that way the delivery became a lot more of the day-to-day and one-on-one coaching support. That's now also facilitated by me and my team.
I love that. And I just want to pause and want to talk about this for anyone who want to ask questions is that when you decided to transition, the way you thought of the group is you tested it with just two people. It's a small group. It wasn't had to be like 10 people, 20 people at once here. Because the reason I'm talking about this is oftentimes a lot of clients I hear that they want to transition right away, that it needs to have like 20, 30 people in order to do group. And so I just want to talk about how you just tested it with two people first and redefining the number and size of how you run group here.
Yeah.
So I want to, yeah, if you want to share insights about that,
Yeah, you're
you
you're
had to
so
change.
right, Diana. Like, walk before you run, I would say. Like it's a different experience. When we actually did our first cohort, we welcomed 12 clients, and that was intentional. I didn't want to bring on 30 at once because I'm like, to go from coaching two people together to 30 might be asking for disaster. So I'm like, I think we could handle 12. And then with every, enrollment period after that, we've just grown the intake and the amount of clients that we can handle at once. I see Jason's question here around group packaging, reduced overall cost. At the time, yes. But in hindsight, I don't know that I would have done that. Like now, we do charge a more premium ticket, I would say, because of the immense level of practical and one-on-one guidance that we share daily for our members. But at the beginning, it was a little bit of that limitation, I think, of, well, if now I'm serving more people at once, it can't be as expensive as if it was one-on-one. And we played around with pricing a lot. Like when we first did the group program, it was not half of my one-on-one pricing, but it was, like close to like almost 50% less, which is probably too low because we still poured so much into it. So I wouldn't say that just by going group, you have to lower your investment. It's all about perceived value and
Yeah.
the outcomes that you're supporting your clients on, right? And if they see the value, they don't necessarily have a prior reference, right? Like they don't know what maybe your one-on-one pricing was. They just know what you're sharing now. And if they
Yeah.
see the value in that, it's fine.
Yeah. And something I've really learned over the years, because I've done one-on-one for a long time, like a decade there. And this year, the last few years now in business coaching is a hybrid option of one-on-one with group. And I really redefine one-on-one. Traditionally, one-on-one as trained coaches, one-on-one means it's through the coaching sessions. But one-on-one support could also mean the ongoing support that you provide through text and voice messaging support. This is something I learned from you, Tiffany, of providing voice notes, having the Slack channel community as well. All that is value add. And so
Hmm.
that's something really important to consider of the value of one-on-one is not just through one-on-one sessions.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I would even go so far to say, and everyone's capacity is different. But because so many coaches do focus on one-on-one calls, sometimes the benefit of doing it a little differently or offering more regular ongoing support is actually even better because it's like your clients don't have to meet you when you're available. You're available to them, right? And so it's just the way that you structure it and frame it from a perceived value standpoint.
Absolutely. We have a question here from Anu is, can we start with group coaching right after beta testing with one-on-one?
I know there's different schools of thought on that, Diana, and feel free to share yours. I see a ton of value of really feeling out one-on-one because you're going to get a much wider diversity of insights by working with different clients than going into group right off the bat. You can, and I'm sure you could be successful with going to group right away. But I wouldn't change what we specifically did in our business because it allowed me and how we wanted to validate of seeing, okay, is what we're going to coach going to work across, different functions, different types of companies, different types of seniority levels. That would have been really hard to do if I had, let's say, a handful of beta clients or one-on-one clients and then immediately jumped into group. But your situation might be a little bit different. So just try to get a good assessment of what are you looking to either validate or assess or align with for your business goals. And if going to group short sooner than later makes sense, then of course do it. And just keep an option for open feedback with your members, right? I think that's always important, regardless, whatever stage of business you're at, is always talk to your customer, always talk to your client and hear them out and be open to feedback.
Yeah.
We've done, just in like the last couple of months, like I'm really big on service recoveries, because that's just something that happens as you scale your business. Sometimes a ball can drop here and there. But that's also my marketing background. That's like there's always a way to recover in a service. And so just welcome the feedback, let them feel heard and take action. And that could actually make them so much more loyal to you on the other end because they're like, wow, like they could have totally just, been defensive or tried to defend what they did. And no, they took a different approach and really listened to try to make it better.
Yeah, I love that. That's something I adopt right now too, is my sessions are really geared towards what my clients are asking me versus what I think would benefit from them. So it's just asking that feedback and don't be afraid to get that feedback is really helpful. I want to address that question as well too, is the way I think about it, it's two things. Number one is the supply and demand, whether you also have the demand of people who want to work with you and whether you have enough leads coming in to close, more clients on a monthly basis. That's number one. Number two is when I think about going from one-on-one to group, is you are putting on the hat more than just a coach. You're now a facilitator, an organizer, a communicator, coordinator. Like there's so many more roles you need to play that you want to ask yourself, do you feel comfortable as well in facilitating and teaching and training, not just being a coach anymore? So there's a lot of that work that needs to be thought about and also from a curriculum design standpoint as well. How do you want to design your program that guides people through the journey there?
Yeah, that's really good. I
Yeah.
know there's a few questions coming through, Diane. You want me to take them?
Sure. Yeah, you take them. I can see them. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I'll come back to Judy. Let me know if I missed any earlier, but I see Judy's was what feedback do your clients provide to you? What do they say they value the most from your coaching? There's several things. I think the piece that comes up the most is how practical and relatable and understood they feel in the strategies that we coach on. They could feel, it's not like chat GPT, like this is coming from like being in the trenches, understanding their reality and equipping them to get the reps in with us. So like when they're out there, they're freaking rocking it, right? And just from like common feedback is the confidence that they've built. And it's ironic because, we help them achieve some pretty major, like tangible milestones in their career, whether growth, income, new opportunities, and all of that. But it always seems to come back to like the confidence that they've gained. And a lot of that's through the level of one-on-one coaching and being very available to them. So that would be a very common feedback that we get.
Yeah.
Uh,
Great.
I
The
think there
other,
was another one from Dolores, but go ahead,
that's a
Diana.
good one. That's a good one. What was your winning strategy to go from 0 to 10K a month in 6 months? As this feels incredible to me after 3 years here. So, yes, how to get to that 10K or 20K month there.
Sure. And Dolores, feel free to share like any context on your end if you feel like there's a blocker or something that's been particularly challenging that can help me go a little bit more specific if you like. For us, it does come back a little bit more to like the number game that I was saying of like knowing my metrics, being able to reverse engineer. And I will say we still do a lot of this, but at the beginning, it was very much like relationship building. Like I would be working my audience. And I think one of the questions you and I were discussing, Diana, like what was one of those things that I thought was initially really necessary and wasn't to succeed in the business? And that ties with what I'm going to say because I thought that I needed like thousands and thousands and thousands of followers to make a certain income level per month. And what I came to realize fairly early on is like, it's actually not about that at all. People just want to feel connected to you and know that you care. And so if you're making intentional efforts to have those conversations, reach out, show interest in them, you'll actually attract a lot more inbound than you might realize. And I think that was one of the strategies, Dolores, that really helped us when it was like, again, building from the ground up. No one really knew who I was. This was a new dynamic when I'm like, I have a little bit of an audience. Let me just go and like message them on Instagram and, have a conversation, see if they're open to hopping on a call, right? And that's what helped us really build that level of monthly income, I'd say fairly fast.
hmm Tiff, I want to ask you a question because I know a little bit of Dolores' background since she's my client here. Is your thoughts on the market right now? Because I know there's a lot of career coaches in the room here. Is with the market shift of how the market impacts what you offer. And remember you telling me last year, like the data shows that a lot of people coming to you wanted to get a new job. And
Yeah.
you really want to focus on what you do really well, which is
Yeah.
helping people with career advancement, leadership. Can you maybe walk through that process? Because there's a lot of people that have been telling me this
Yeah.
year, especially career coaches, I no longer want to do job search coaching. I want to do leadership coaching, executive presence coaching.
Yeah.
Things. Can you maybe just walk through your thought process and how you thought about that, especially like their leads coming in, they want to work with me, they want this help. Do I serve them or not?
Yeah.
If anyone can
I think
relate, put in
that's
that.
it's such a good question, Diana. And that just sometimes like the growing pains that comes as you grow your business where you have to say no more than yes. We kind of got to that point last year and it was intentional. Like we wanted to experiment and open up how we served people in that time, which was very much in need of new roles with the shifts that were happening in the market. And we had also just concretely from a client win perspective had supported so many of our clients in securing new jobs. And that wasn't even necessarily our initial premise, but it just so happened from what they were learning and applying with me and my team. And so we wanted to go a little bit into that experiment and see what that would look like. But despite the successes we've gotten for them, it just didn't feel like aligned with our brand or where we can really show up as best for our team and the way we want to serve our clients. And so, yes, we technically could have continued doing that, but I think at one point you have to come back to your why and really hone in on your differentiators in the market and being known for something because otherwise it could be like you're trying to serve too many people at once. And that's really one of the key things in scaling is like you can't serve everybody. Like you're probably going to scale a lot better focusing on a particular audience, a particular market in a very particular way than trying to be like the yes man to everybody. But I know that can feel a little scary, like in earlier stages of business. And I will say that does change. Like in an earlier stage of business, you might actually want to take on more and learn and just get your feelers out there and uncover what it is that you really want to do with, of course, some, consistency across those different clients that you're serving. But I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to like niche down so much at the beginning if you're seeing a need for it. I would simply caution of just going where the wind blows because that can get very messy very quickly. And you don't want to be someone that's maybe perceived as like flip-flopping every other day of like today I'm this and then tomorrow I'm that and then the next month I'm going to be this, right? And so that consistency of your brand and message is really important. And for us, we've always kind of kept consistency in our brand. Like even when it was supporting people in getting new jobs, it was always with the mind of like more growth and more income and still teaching them the skills so that then when they entered into that job, they were like future proofing their career and being an incredible performer and not having to look for another job in 6 months from now, right? So like there was still a lot of synergy there. It just didn't feel any more like the type of audience that we really wanted to hone in on. And so it was a difficult shift, but a needed one and one that we're pleased with. But it takes a little bit of that confidence and courage to do it. And you don't have to do that always in the early stage of your business.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I think a lot of people relate. I want to bring Irina here to ask you a question here, Tiff, around one-on-one coaching support. Irina, you and I just met, and I know you have also a robust group program here. If you want to ask that question that you have here for Tiffany.
Yes, I'd love to. Hi, Tiffany. I'm a
Hi,
follower, so it's so great to see you.
you
And it's
too.
incredible what you've built. So my question is around, I have a group program. It sounds like
Nice.
it's structured a little bit differently, but I'm curious about how you're able to support daily. You mentioned you have like daily one-on-one support, and Diana mentioned what that looks like through community, but curious how you're able to do that because I know it's a ton of work. Um, and also curious about if you did transition to getting co-coaches on your team and what that transition has looked like, because that's something I'm super hesitant about. So curious to hear your experience.
Yeah, I love that. It's a really good question. So I'll break it down in maybe just a few quick parts. We expanded the team beyond me for like almost 2 years now. I brought in one member close to 2 years ago to get a feeler of having me plus him supporting our members. He was a little bit more focused on like new opportunities, and I was focused a little bit more on internal advancement. And it was going very well. And from there, we wanted to build it out further. So we brought out on another team member. And the way that it's structured is we all offer one-on-one support, but the cadence of it looks different. So for instance, the support with me, it does take place in our community. So it's not one-on-one calls with me every day. I do host calls weekly, but they're not one-on-one calls, but it's daily support in more asynchronous guidance. And so we set the parameters with our clients so they're very clear of like when they can expect to hear back. So I get to it when I'm able to, and it doesn't disrupt the day. But it's helpful for them because they're not waiting for days on end without guidance or feedback into implementation of what we're coaching. And then for those two, team members that we have that are supporting, they have their designated days in the week and their specific focus areas. So it's very clear for any new member we bring in of how they can leverage me, how they can leverage them. And actually, just as of earlier this year, we've actually brought in our co-coach who actually also layers on intensive one-on-one coaching call support for our members. And we're very grateful and fortunate to have her as a former Fortune 1 leader. And so she's very much in line with our ethos and the way that we pride ourselves on practical industry first experience, and the way that we're really guiding our members to achieve their goals. So that's been a great dynamic. It's a newer learning for us, but it's been going very well so far. And our members that are leveraging that additional support has been very useful. So you don't have to do all of that at once, but I think the limitation that we sometimes have for anyone who hasn't brought on like a co-coach is like, well, I have all the knowledge. Like, how can anyone else possibly have that same knowledge? And in full transparency, Arena, like I think I probably waited a little too long. Not for the others. I think I already knew like those were not my areas of expertise. I need someone who could teach and coach on that. But for bringing in the co-coach, that I'm like, who could be like another me, who sees things the same way, who has a similar type of philosophy in terms of career growth, and career advancement. And I finally found someone that was perfect. So I'd say, don't just rush and bring on anyone. You want to make sure it's someone that represents your brand, that can deliver at the standard that you require, and that can also take on the capacity that you need. So maybe there's someone in mind already right now, but it's a good reflection point. And I'd say that definitely brings a lot of benefit if you're able to build it out because it's less dependence on you as well. And then again, helps with scalability of the business.
I love that. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. And I saw Demisha raised her hand as well. Demisha, if you want to ask your question, it sounds like it's a build on to what Irina's asking here or a lead gen question. I'll bring you on
Yes.
here.
So my question is around the outreach part. So you mentioned that you did a lot of relationship building. I know you mentioned Instagram, but can you kind of talk about what that looks like on LinkedIn when you reach out to them? What's your initial outreach? Like, is it just a voice note mentioning the services you offer or what they have going on? Can you kind of clarify what that
Oh, for sure. Yes. I would never recommend leading with like your services. I can tell you that irks the heck out of me, and I'm sure we all see it in our DMs, like especially on LinkedIn. It's much rarer on Instagram that you'll get that, or it just goes to your spam message folder that you put in a dark hole that you never look at. But on LinkedIn, you get a lot of that, and I'm just like, yeah, ignore, ignore, ignore. So you really want to lead with value first, but even beyond that, as a starting point, is just like show genuine interest. So we will always, start our outreaches, whether it's me sending it or my team sending it around the other person, like what we appreciate about them, what we really love about their background, getting a feel of where they're at. And we share value. Maybe it's, my newsletters, maybe it's a recent podcast that we've released, maybe it's a resource that we have that can be helpful. But we always try to lead value first because otherwise it's very hard to build trust and no one likes feeling sold to. And I think, especially in today's market where there's a lot of coaches, right? There's a lot of options. Allowing leads, especially cold leads, to get to know you first and build trust is like the most important thing that you can do. So, yes, no to like, hey, great to, come across your profile. By the way, I, do this, this, this. It's far too much about you first. And it's really like the same with any type of networking. Like when you're building relationships with people, you want to feel that trust as a starting point. That's even how, Diane and I met at the beginning. Like I really loved the work she was doing, and I didn't reach out, with any ask or anything. I was just like, hey, like this is super cool. I'm newer in the space, like would love to, just learn more and get to know you and what's gotten you to this point, right? You always want to build relationships that way because the business will follow. That's the fun part, right? Like when they feel connected to you, and that's the importance of personal branding in a service-based business. We can, there's a lot of job search coaches out there, right? Like there's only so many ways you can do an interview. There's only so many ways you can do a resume, but you still have your unique perspective and what you bring to it. And that's the magic in the relationship building, is helping them feel like, who is Demisha? Like, what is her unique essence that like, oh, I'm drawn to? And coming back, I think it was to Judy's point earlier, that's a lot of the feedback we get from our members is how people felt connected to me and my background and the things I've experienced or the way that I've supported clients that they can relate to. And so when you're building that connection, it's a very powerful thing. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Something I talk a lot about right now, Tiff, is around doubling down on trust building activities. When you do more trust building value add activities, that is when you increase conversion sales and clients.
Yeah.
And so when we think about trust building activities, it's going to take time and patience, meaning we're not just pitching our service right away, but we really need to get curious as a coach of asking powerful questions to understand where they're at in their journey, what are their challenges, what are their desires and hopes, so that then we can move forward that conversation of helping them as well, so that they would want to talk to you. I think that is so, so important. I think oftentimes we underestimate the number of touch points we require to move someone forward in the journey before they're willing to buy.
Yeah. And there's just so much information. Like, think of ourselves, like we're bombarded every day. Like it's really a fight for attention. And so if you can make someone feel good, feel seen and understood, it's just like it's kind of table stakes to be quite honest, but like it's just the way it needs to be,
Absolutely.
especially in an era of AI where anything can be chat GPT'd and spewed out. like that's not what's going to win in today's work environment.
Yeah. So now I'm going to move into our part two of this session here, which is the breakthrough to six-figure launches and the hard lessons learned. So after attending my mastermind, this was back in April 2023, you had your first six-figure launch. This was like, I still remember this moment. Like it was in 2 or 3 months after coming back. Huge, huge milestone. And I remember prior to that, there were a lot of questions and doubt. I remember prior to that mastermind. So what do you believe made the biggest difference that unlocked this next level for you? What mindset or strategy shifts came out from the mastermind experience that changed the game for you here?
Oh man, there were a few, Diana. I think being at the mastermind just really brought a lot of like clarity in what I was already feeling and thinking coming into it. But I think the biggest mindset was that if something's not working in your business or it feels like it's not working, is not necessarily that that's the problem. Like you want to dissect the right problem and you want to solve for the right constraint. And earlier that year, so in January, Diana knows this, we had one of our most challenging periods where we had a launch and it fell very short, like very short from our goal. And I think we had underestimated certain shifts in the market and the impact that would have on potential clients. But it also led me initially to go into a bit of a spiral of like, oh my gosh, is this over? Was this just like riding a wave for a year and now I don't have a viable business anymore? Like it was that extreme in my thinking at that time. And that's when I really, pulled back and said, okay, hang on a second. Like I need to go into problem solving mode. Like what really is the thing that's not working? And there were definitely important insights that came from that allowed us to go back a bit to the drawing board. We kind of, slowed down to speed up because the latter half of that year, Diana, was our biggest year up to that point. But the first months were really slow because I'm like, I don't want to just keep like beating a dead horse. I'm like, something needs to shift. And so I took the intentional time to reflect of what those shifts needed to be, solve the problems, not be scared. I think that was something that used to plague me before, where I would be very scared. I would feel intimidated or overwhelmed, and I tend to shut down. And I feel like that. Luckily, I also have a very supportive partner who's dealt with far more severe problems in his businesses than I have and was able to bring a lot of perspective of what needed to shift to. And so coming into the mastermind with you, Diana, there was already kind of a better sense of like, okay, I think I know what I need to do. And then a lot of the conversations and sessions that we had there just kind of sealed the deal of like, okay, let's go and do this thing and let's go execute. And so when we had that next launch in January, so we had one in we had one in January, and then the next one was in June. So there's like a full 6 months of like no major launch activity. And just for context, launches have typically been our biggest revenue moments in a year. So when we talk about like ebbs and flows in a month, yes, we have recurring revenue, but those would be our biggest moments. So to go about 6 months without a big moment slotted and having restraint there was scary. But I'm grateful that we did that because it was needed. It was really needed and helped support the growth from that point forward.
Yeah, I love this. I want to talk about this problem solving mode because how many of you
Yeah.
can relate when you, especially like if you had a challenging first 2 months right now, 2025, you can relate to this and you feel like, oh my God, is my business over or can I even make it? And one thing I really admire about you, Tiff, is every time there's a challenge, the way you respond and rise, you get into resourcefulness mode instead of beating yourself up. And I think some of you, because I've been talking to you, you've been beating yourself up and you're stressed and you're overwhelmed, you're desperate to make cash. You don't make good decisions. And so the key here I want you to share, Tiff, it's like, what are some things you really have done, like specifically, like instead of beating yourself up, it's like, you know what? We're going to figure this out. Like, especially, it's like, how do you figure out what's the right problem to solve, the
Oh,
right
yeah.
constraint?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a big one. It's not always so obvious, but I think we could probably all agree that beating ourselves up isn't actually going to help anything. And if you have enough, like a strong enough why of why you're doing this and why you're in this business and why you've started it or why you've built it, like you can't just walk away from that. And for me, I never see failure as like a bad thing. It's like you win or you learn, right? So it's more of like, okay, that clearly didn't go as I planned. And I can tell you the Tiffany of like 2025 is much wiser than the Tiffany of, that year that we're talking about, where it was like full on panic mode. But now, and like we're facing certain challenges this year because we're making shifts and we know that they're the right shifts, but there's growing pains there, right? We've made shifts on our team. We've had to let team members go. We've brought new team members on, like really hard decisions. Like, you never want to have to be in a situation like that, but it's just part of being a CEO. And so, knowing and not being scared of tackling the problems in your business is probably the most important thing that you can do. The CEO is like the distillation of a company's problems, right? And so instead of seeing things too glass half full, which is, by the way, my tendency because I'm a very optimistic person. And so I've had the tendency in the past to just be like, no, but it's like, it's okay. Or like, it's just this month. Like now I'm like, oh, I see cues and I'm like, hang on a second. Like, is this an effect of something from earlier months? And it instinctively allows me to go into like, okay, what's the problem we need to solve? What's the constraint holding us back? And really try to solve for the right constraint because sometimes one constraint can lead to multiple problems. But it's like, but what's the actual problem that needs solving? And you'll have to ask yourself some very honest questions. You'll probably have to talk to your customers and your clients to see, what they're feeling. Is there something you're not picking up on? And I think at that time, Diana, like prior to coming to the mastermind, I must have hopped on like a ton of client calls and just like talk to my people to get a sense of like what was really important for them coming into our program. Like what was the differentiators? What did we do particularly well versus others? And it helped me feel reconnected with why we were doing this and how we needed to serve that actually allowed us to improve the performance of the business. But it wouldn't have happened without feeling comfortable of like solving problems
Yeah.
and being okay with bad things happening because good things can come from that.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. You really put on the CEO hat on in solving problems here. So now I remember going in your second year of coming to my mastermind a second time around, one of your big focus was improving conversions. That was your big
Yeah.
thing, improving conversions. Like you talked about how you have the leads. Now it's like, how do I improve the conversion? What strategies help you close clients at a much higher level consistently?
Yeah. There are a few things. First, I think is it always just comes back to like mindset and like conviction. I built a lot more conviction in how I talked about my program and also coached my team, who was supporting on the sales side to be able to relay that information as well. But it was also the insight of improving the delivery of our product or our program. So I knew that, we could have kept it as is and it probably would have done okay, but that's not how I roll. I'm like, I just always want to make it as best as amazing as it can be. And so I stretched myself and I added things into it that others weren't doing and tried to find a way of making it distinctively ours. And that added a lot of value for members coming in so that when we would be talking on a sales call or in a webinar or workshop, it like the value was very clear. And so that instinctively helped drive higher conversion, both in the delivery and the way that they'd be supported, but also in the conviction that it had, where I knew like this is a really incredible product that we're giving and supporting them on. So it helped find a better alignment and fit in the way we wanted to serve our clients best.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you focus also on that improving the program enhancement of it so that it will get better experience, better results. As a result, it also helps with improving referrals as well in your business. That's something
Totally.
that you've done, and I've referred a lot of business to you as well. And something that I want to mention that what I've seen you've done here really well is from a sales conversion standpoint is what are things that we could do from a nurturing activities, and you started building your email lists and writing newsletters as well, right? Multiple times,
Yeah,
2 times a week, which is huge, like the term of dedication to that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that and how that really helped with building the community, building
totally.
the like and trust factor?
Yeah, yeah, that was very intentional. We started our newsletter about a year and a half ago. It's crazy, it's already been that. But the idea of doing that was to bring very high value, like I was talking about before, high value to our community first and foremost and building that trust and rapport and showing the deep knowledge and insight that we bring on the topics that we support. And so it was a shift because prior to that, we still had an email list, but it wasn't really growing. And it was, I found, a little bit too promotional. Like it felt like every email felt like I just had to send an email, which I didn't like. And it felt like I was always feeling the need to like sell something. And I, again, being very hard and constructive criticism with myself is like, would I like to get my emails? And I'm like, I don't think I would actually. Now it's like if you ask me like, would you give, your newsletter to someone that you've never met before? I'm like, hands down, yes. Like I'm very proud of the content that we put out every week. Even with our Friday issue, there's a lot of research that goes into that to find great resources to share with our community. So I'm extremely proud of what we've built. And I couldn't have said that before. I was like, no, I was not proud of my emails before. It just felt like more email marketing, not value driven activity. And so I'm really, really happy with how that's evolved. And we're even in the spirit of like constantly making things better and better. We're even at a point now thinking like, how can we continue to re-energize this? Like, let's switch it up now. What does the next generation of this newsletter need to look like? We've added a lot of things into the business, so maybe we need to put more attention there now. And so, just different reflections. But you're very right, Diana, that building your email list is so important because that's a community that you own. It's not affected by an algorithm. You can directly talk with them. They're in your direct ecosystem. So, for any of you who have an email list, like keep it going. For those of you who don't or are thinking about it, get on that as soon as you can. Um, I use Kit, by the way. I really, really enjoy it. And they have a great promotion. I think that's still live, that it's free until your first 10,000 subscribers. So if you are starting out, you can always check that out. I'm not even an affiliate for them. I just really enjoy it. But yeah, that's been a big strategy of the spirit, Diana, of like
Yeah.
value first, and building that type of trust with our community.
Yeah. And that's a big commitment because you write both of those newsletters like twice a week.
Yeah.
To that. That's a lot of work for you there. And I something that you and I want to ask, this is something for the community for you to think about, is you bring out a really good point, is really think about what's your differentiation factor? What makes you unique? What makes you stand out? What would your client value and appreciate? And something that I really admire what you have done also in your program, Tiffany, is bringing in guest experts, bringing really high quality leaders in the industry that showcase the relationship you have and brings just really good quality conversations there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's something we did over like the last year and a half, and our members really enjoyed it because we were helping them gain access to people they never would have had access to. And I think also as a coach, it helped me build more authority in my space because I was able to attract these people to be in my program and only my program. So that holds a lot of weight for sure. We've shifted our strategy now because we've also launched our podcast and we want to make that more available to the public. So that's very intentional. But it's also a big reason why now one of our resident co-coaches is one of these incredible leaders who we're so fortunate to be working with. So we've just made certain adjustments of being able to go even more hands-on with our clients. But I think having some type of, guest expertise, whether it's like one-offs or always on, you could see what works best for you. But it's always just with the idea of like, what would your community value the most, right? And you could always poll them and ask them questions and see, is that what they'd want? Or like maybe they'd actually want something else. And trying to bring them the things that would actually help them say yes and stay with you. We have a fairly strong renewal rate with our clients. And I think that's a big function of the value that we deliver while they're actively working with us. So it takes a little pressure off constantly finding new clients, but really nurturing that and tapping on the right, I'd say, features of your delivery can be a big driver for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Demisha has a question here.
Oh,
What's the call to action to get the
Sonia.
newsletter? Oh, what's that?
I'm just like getting a little teary-eyed from Sonia's message. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you so much. That
Tiffany's
means a
newsletter helped
lot.
me deal with a toxic boss during my corporate job. Oh, that's
Thank
amazing.
you.
Love receiving that
Sending
love
love.
here. We got two questions here that's applicable here is what
Yeah.
is the call to action to get them to the newsletter? Is it the LinkedIn post you make them, then call to action to join the newsletter?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. We do it a lot through LinkedIn. I'll always tease my upcoming newsletter. We also have our LinkedIn newsletter that we started publishing as of late last year. So that's still growing. I'd say most of our audience is within our direct newsletter list. But yes, so we'll always drive traffic through a LinkedIn post to our upcoming newsletters. I'll also reshare them so that you can read them afterwards. I do that across platforms for sure. And as I was mentioning, we use them as great resources for new people we're coming in contact with, depending what they're dealing with. It's like, oh, hey, like actually just wrote this newsletter on this. Like, here, enjoy. Hope it's helpful for you. And that's a great way of warming people up because, again, everyone's newsletters are different. Ours are pretty thorough, so it's very actionable and very practical that they can apply immediately.
Good, good. And Salima's question is, do you pay the guest speakers? How do you invite the guest speakers to join as a guest speaker?
I have not never paid for a guest speaker. And they've actually always been very willing to do it for free. And I will say, I think one of my big learnings in this is shoot your shot because I brought in some pretty heavy hitters, some that
Big
I never
names.
thought, yeah. I don't know if you guys know Matt Abrahams. I admire him a lot. I share a lot of his content. He's a great communication expert from Stanford.
Yeah.
He was one of our experts, and I just like, shot my shot one day and built some relationships and chatted. And then it led to him being very open to joining us. That's how a lot of these things have unfolded. So I would say it doesn't only have to be people you know in your network. That's been a good amount of our experts, but I also really branched out to find new people. And if they believe in you and your mission and are the type of person that likes to give back, it actually won't be something they typically require compensation for. If you're
Hmm.
going for very big names or like famous personalities, that might be a different story. There was one that I really wanted, but I'm like, sorry, I can't pay $25,000 for, a 1 hour engagement. Not now, anyways. So it's okay, but you won't know unless you ask. So that's been a big philosophy of ours for
Yeah.
how we run our
Yeah.
ship.
Yeah, that's similar to me. And I would also say what's really important too is that you're really good also with building relationships, Tiffany. I think it goes back to networking, nurturing. How we reach out, how we nurture a relationship matters of whether they're going to say yes. And number
Yeah.
two is our online presence in terms of credibility, authority, all that matters as well. I know you worked really hard in building your online brand over the last several years and becoming a LinkedIn learning instructor. So I think all of that elevates the trust factor
Yeah.
and plus the fact that you have a really good program and solid number of clients in there as well. That helps with people saying yes to that. So all those things I think play into the factor as well when people consider being a guest speaker for you there.
Yeah, totally. And even on that note, Diana, because I know you were always such a huge support with me in becoming a LinkedIn Learning instructor, and I'm so, so grateful for that. And I get questions often of like, is that worth it? Like, would you do it? And it's funny because a lot of people that reach out to me about it, it's actually about the money. Like they're asking, like, is it worth it? Like, in terms of the money or the royalties. And it's funny because I'm like when I decided I was like it was actually never about the money. Like I wanted it to build more credibility and visibility because at that time I still wasn't a huge audience. Not that I am even to this day, but it's not a huge audience on LinkedIn. But I really adore my audience there. And so for me, it was more of being able to share value in a different format, in a different way. And I find that just an important thing because when we're building our businesses, if we're only looking at financials, as our like North Stars, it can feel really demotivating when that month doesn't hit the target or that quarter's off or you're like, what the heck am I doing wrong? Right? Like it's just like immediate self-sabotage. And so I kind of call that out when people are asking me what I was like, well, like, yeah, like that's like the cherry on top that you get royalties from it. But like I wouldn't recommend doing it if that's your sole motive because the royalties are so sporadic too, right? It's like up, down, you never really know how they're calculating it. But I think that's just a general thing in terms of business. I mean, we're all here to make money. It's obviously an important piece. Don't get me wrong. But I really hope that we all have more of our why beyond that in any type of thing we're saying yes to.
Hmm.
And that's just, again, the bit of the school of thought I choose to use.
Absolutely. Saw a lot of head nodding that really agree with that. I totally agree with you as well, getting clear on your why. I always believe that build a business that aligns with even the life that you want, what's important to you here. And I have to tell you, like, becoming the LinkedIn Learn Instructor was one of the most popular questions I've been getting the last several years. And I think a lot of people think
Yeah.
about it that I'm going to make a lot of money. And I'm going to be honest, I have 11 courses and I only make a few $100 of royalties a month. So if I only solely rely on that, I would be out of business right now.
Yeah.
But I do agree that it helps with from a credibility, visibility, and authority building
Yeah.
standpoint. My strategy of why I decided to do 11 of those was for me to get speaking opportunities. So I used it as a sampler for organizations to sample me of how I present in front of an audience.
Yeah.
And that has helped me get into Fortune 500 companies, the UN, because of the courses are there. So I make
Totally.
money through that way versus the courses.
Oh, totally. It's great for that. It's great for discoverability. I've had a lot of our clients who found me first through a LinkedIn learning course, and then they're like, I like this girl. Let me go see what else she has. And then, they go down the rabbit hole. So I'm very grateful for that because again, it's just getting yourself out there in different ways, and being able to serve people in multiple avenues that you're choosing.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to move now to the part three of the segment, and then we'll open up the floor to questions here. Is now part three is about scaling to seven figures, CEO moves, tough calls, sustainable growth. So, what are some of the mindset shifts to help you step into the CEO role at this stage now in your business? And I know you talk a lot about working on your business,
Hmm.
versus working in your business. Can we talk a little bit about that in terms of how do you distinguish and balance between the both?
Yeah. I mean, it ultimately all comes back to that, Diana. Like, I think as coaches, especially for all of us who've started a business, we probably started it because we love coaching and we love helping people in whichever way we choose to serve them. And depending the type of person you are, for me, like my natural gravitational pull is like to do that kind of work. And in hindsight, I think I stayed in that headspace too long, without really focusing on building the machine that runs the machine. And so I recognized, especially in bringing on our COO and operationalizing the business more as of last year, that I'm like, things need to shift. And I can't just focus on things that I like to do. I also need to do what's required. So that was the big shift, of putting on my CEO hat. Of course, I still do, and I'm active in a lot of the coaching, but I'm very cognizant every day of where I'm allocating my time. Um, the old me would have spent probably most of my day in delivery. And now I'm like, I can't. Like, I can't afford that. I need to build. I need to focus on forward thinking ideation and strategies, not just for the next month, but like the next year and 2 years and 3 years and what we're working towards. And so that shift was a lot more, Diana, around like strategic vision, right? And like now it's like very clear for me of like the different anchors of our business from, the content and, brand building to also, media that's, integrated now with our podcast and other things that we have, coming up. And then there's more of the coaching and the deliverability. And then there's also more speaking and corporate engagement. So there's like different anchors that we're excited to continue building that all feed into each other. But that wouldn't have come from me staying stuck in the delivery of things. So that was a huge shift. I'd say the other one is a little bit what I said earlier about like solving for the right constraints in the business, and making sure that we're tackling that as much as possible in a given week so that we're constantly shipping. Like speed is very important, especially now. There's so much change. There's so many options of coaches. We need to be able to keep up a good momentum, but also focus on the right things. So it's not about doing all the things, but focusing on the right things. And I think that's where turning on CEO hat a little bit more and not just doing what I love to do, but also doing the things that are required helped a lot in building more of the foundation to allow for that level of scalability.
Great. And what were some of the lessons you learned when it came to hiring and leading a team?
How much time do you have, Diana?
Another
Yeah,
section here.
a lot, a lot. I mean, like I love team building. I always did, and I was very excited for the day that I'd be able to do that in my own business. And I will say, for any of you that have a team or you're thinking to build a team, and I know Diana, you have your team, like it's very humbling when people choose to work for you. like I have to like remind myself that I'm like, wow, I'm like, not only, am I supporting these incredible people's livelihood, but like they're choosing to be part of this. I've had members who like left their corporate jobs, to be part of our business. And it's like, wow, like that really means something. And I think in that same vein, sometimes we have a lot of hope for people we bring on our teams because of the commitment they've made and the sacrifice that they've gone through. And you try so hard to make it work. And you're like, I know this is going to work. I'm going to just try. I'm going to give it more time. And it could actually blind you a little bit in like the hard decision that you need to make. And that was a spot I found myself in last year, where in the span of the year, we had to let go of two team members who were amazing people. And like I love and adore. It just wasn't the right need for the business and the level of scale that we were going for. And that was a really hard pill to swallow. Like, I don't envy myself in those conversations. It was a very difficult several weeks leading up to that. But it was, what, again, was required. And I think as a business owner and CEO, it's just part of the game. Like, we're going to have those moments where the team is very stable, and then other times where you will just have to make those tough calls and recognize, what do I actually need for the business? So those were definitely some key learnings, Diana, of not waiting too long. Like now I'm like, I mean, we have an amazing team, like no one's going anywhere, but I think it took me a little bit of time to get there because I probably should have made some calls sooner than later around some members of the team and the shifts that needed to happen. I just always like to see the good in people. And I think that could sometimes be a fault where it's like I let things linger a little bit too long,
Mhm.
especially when it's your own business that you put a lot of heart and soul into.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And what I'm really hearing is the importance of putting also the CEO business hat on, right? You care about your people, but at the same time, like, is this really working in our business here? And I want to also ask you another question. I know at one point you also decided to retire a program that you had. What was
Yeah.
that? What led to that decision, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah. Again, like one of those tough
¿Qué
calls
pasa por
where
acá?
sometimes you build products thinking it's what the market needs. I think a big learning for me was like do your market research because as much as the people who joined that program loved it, and a lot of them ended up upgrading into our primary program, that is our flagship to this day, it never really gained the traction I wanted it to. And I was trying to like be like, but no, like it's got to work. Like maybe I just need to sell it differently. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to do that. And I think it just got to a point where I'm like, no, I just don't think anybody really wants that, or they don't want it in this way. I actually like put together a course last year that I was very excited about because it was on a theme that so much of my content resonated for with my audience. And I probed and I did do my market research, and yet it still didn't do anything for the business. And I poured a lot of time and energy into that. And so it was a little bit of a letdown of having to retire it even before it really got out the door. But now I use it as a free resource because I'm like, it's still amazing and high value, but I'm just not going to charge people for it. It's fine, And it's like, do I like having to do it that way? No, but hey, if it's about just putting more goodwill out there in the world, I'm just going to do it and not get too stuck on those types of calls. But it just goes back to really understanding, like, well, one, knowing your audience well. And sometimes we feel like we know it, but it's like really, really try to know it. Like, really try to find out if you're going to put energy towards a product or program or a service, like, make sure it's something they really want and that the demand is truly there, because that could be time allocated very differently.
Yeah,
For me, the
absolutely.
learning was really focusing on our primary program and scaling that more.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate this real talk, like of how to think about this. Two more questions that I want to open to the floor to the to the audience here
Sure.
is I know you're really big on learning, growing, and you're constantly investing, whether it's program, coaches, masterminds. How has that made a big difference in your own personal growth, but also business growth? And what would you say to someone who's looking to invest, but on the fence of investing in a coach or like a mastermind?
Oh, it's really important. I know there's people on here. I know Katie, if you're still here, she values it very similarly to me. Investing in your business is so important. I mean, investing in yourself is so important. I think we tell this to our clients all the time. We're like, why don't you just buy? Like, this is the best investment you can make, right? But I think with, Diana, I mean, we've been really fortunate to not just become great friends, but also work together. I joined your mastermind 2 years in a row, and it was such an incredible experience because you really gain different things from each of the investments that you make. In yours, I think it was really rich in terms of the quality of like-minded people that you were bringing together, like-minded women at the time, and some of the very similar challenges and growth opportunities. So to have this really intimate environment over several days was like priceless. I think that was something that really helped me at a time of need in that first year. And then the second year was more of like using it as the fuel to like keep going. And so there's always that purpose, but I can't recommend, investing in yourself enough. This past year, additionally, we decided to invest with the acquisition.com team, and that was really instrumental for our business in a lot of the growth that we've had and some of the shifts in strategy that we've made. And even prior in like my early years, like I've always invested in something. Like when I first started out, it was investing in a program that helped you grow a brand through social media and build a business that way. Shortly after that was a coach that was helping to, get you to like consistent, like 5-figure months and whatnot, right? And so there was always kind of a need that I identified, and I valued the expertise of others who have done the thing that I can gain insights from to get to where I want to go faster. And so if you feel very similarly to that and you see an opportunity, I think, again, Diana, you've just been always so incredibly supportive. And I know your clients will all speak the praises about working with you because you have this ability of connecting the right people, but also being very attentive to needs and supporting us in that. And I think it's a wonderful thing because why should you have to go through this alone? And again, if the investment makes sense and you see the ROI, like we've always made back our money on our investments, like and then some, right? So it's never been something that I'm like, oh shoot, like that was a total waste. There was actually, I should clarify, there was one moment where I actually had to get out of an engagement, not with Diana. Diana was fantastic, but it was a different coach I was working with, a pretty well-known coach, and her team, and it got to the point where the monthly investment was not meeting up with the recurring value I was getting, and I was very transparent with them about that. And we kind of went our separate ways. So just also recognize when those shifts need to happen because it's still your hard-earned dollars, and you want to make sure if you're investing in something, it's going to bring you the rewards and the growth that you're looking for.
Amazing. Thank you for that transparency. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I've always invested in something every year. My husband always tells me as long as you make it back, go learn from it and then go make the money back there. So absolutely. So my wrap-up question here is for those who are here today who are thinking, I want to be there next year. I want to hit my 6-figure lunges, 7-figure business. What's your best advice for them? What are maybe some daily habits, decisions or investments they should make that could truly move the needle? What's your best advice?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's a good question, Diana. I will say, well, one, you can make it happen. Like I started out in today's session, like I started from zero from a business building standpoint. You all have a great foundation under your belt. It's probably what's led you to do the work that you do. Don't be shy in getting the support that you feel is going to help you get to that next level. If it's investing in coaching or working with someone that will help you get there, fantastic. If it's a little bit what I was sharing too of like getting out of the weeds and like actually focusing on building the business and what's needed to get you from point A to point B a lot faster. Focus on that. Recognize where your constraints are so that you're not seeing the same movie play over and over again and you're like, well, why is this not growing? Why am I still, stuck at this point in my business? Chances are there's something that needs to shift. So don't be blind to that. Really take the time to be hard on yourself, hard on the business, and do what's required. I'd say beyond that, just like believe in what you're doing. It could be very hard out there. Entrepreneurship is not always easy. Like I said, even now, like we're going through interesting growing pains that can feel uncomfortable at times. But if you're really clear of why you're doing what you're doing, that conviction is there and you see the finish line, like consistency and speed are two very important qualities and daily habits to lean into.
Such great advice. Can we all give Tiffany some love here and support for just being transparent? Let's show her
Thanks,
some sort
guys.
of
I hope
love.
this was
Thank you for
helpful.
being so transparent. Love and transparency. I just really, really appreciate you, Tiffany, for just
Sure.
being raw and honest. This is why I'm hosting these sessions. It's not just the highs, but the challenges, the growing pains as an entrepreneur here. So thank you so much. My fellow mastermind alum like Katie McPhee is here as well. We got to have you, Katie, to come in next as well to be a guest speaker. If any of you want to just type in the comment, what are some great insights in the comments? That'd be amazing. We're going to open the floor to some questions. If you can keep your questions specifically that could also applicable to everyone else in the group, that would be amazing. I saw a really good question. I think Jason, you posted that question. Turning no into yes. This is around objection handling, right? Is that the question? We get a lot, Tiffany, of how to turn a no into yes, especially around, oh, I don't have the money. I gotta ask my spouse. What are some of your advice around in terms of handling objections?
Oh my gosh. The irony is like I've actually come to love handling objections because I think when you become so confident in what you offer, like it doesn't even really feel like an objection. It's just like I have to help this person realize what they're capable of because they're clearly standing in their own way, whether it's money, time, spouse, the need, like, is this the right thing for me, right? And so giving them the opportunity to get closer to saying yes. Doing actually less talking and more listening is a big one. I'd say when anyone comes with an objection, it's never like the actual objection. If they're like, oh, I don't know that I have the budget right now, you want to really counter that and help them see for themselves what they're losing by not making that investment. Or like by waiting to make that investment, how that can actually further hinder their current situation. Or if like their spouse is like a big decision maker and they're like, well, I don't know, like I don't know if my husband's going to be on board with this. And it's like, well, is your husband like happy with the situation you're in right now? Like if the tables were reversed, would you support them? Like are you asking for support or permission like in this? Like which way is this going? And it helps them come to their own conclusion that this is something that they need. It does it doesn't always happen immediately. I think that's the other thing as coaches or whoever's leading those calls. It's not always on the spot. And sometimes people do rightfully just want to reflect and take time. So don't feel like that's, an end all of like, ah, shoot, like that's it. But always book a follow up with them. That's one of the things that even working with the acquisition.com team is very big on of like booking a follow up meeting so that you're always having some type of continued touch point with them, even if they're not ready to make the decision right there. It shows you care. It shows that you're able to understand their reality. You could maybe share additional resources that will help them make that decision because often it's more information that they need, not more time. But when you really believe in what you're selling and what you offer, they're probably going to feel that in you. And then they have to kind of catch up and get there and be patient with them. I think, especially in today's market where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of nerves. People are being more conservative with their dollars and where they're spending. Being empathic in that, giving maybe more flexibility in your options is a great strategy as well that can help them work with you in a way that's maybe different than initially intended, but still a way that can be a great collaboration.
Absolutely. I actually love handling objections right now. Same with you here. And I think this goes back to if you really believe in your offer and the impact that you can make, it is really getting curious. Especially I always believe is that if they are really interested in working with you, there's always a way. There's always a way. And something that I've been teaching a lot right now is instead of thinking you got to negotiate on price, meaning that you think that you need to drop your price to close, is to negotiate on terms, payment terms. So whether that is a more stretched out payment term or more flexibility, like a down payment and then pay a little bit later. Whatever that is get curious. And something that I've learned with pricing is really understand whether you eliminate whether pricing is a real objection. If it is, then find out what is it that they have cash on hand on a monthly basis that they can pay you. And then work out a payment plan that will work out for them as well. Especially if you're selling high ticket, especially if you're high ticket, you've got to get comfortable with dealing with these objections there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Another question that I saw here was around program design. Just going back up a bit. Is it from how well prepared are you when you go to group calls?
Mm. Well, I think it depends how you structure yours. We've actually shifted structures over time. Now we actually give our members a little bit of prep work before each one. I think because I've become very, accustomed to what I coach and teach, and I'm fairly good at thinking on my feet and situations. I think it's one of the things our clients appreciate a lot. I actually don't do much prep, but it's still very effective coaching in those sessions with them. But perhaps in your case, maybe you do want to prepare certain notes or talking points if there are certain messages you want to make sure you pass. So it really depends how you're structuring it on your end. In my case, it doesn't require a ton of prep. I just essentially share the topic that we're covering, what the expectation is. And so it gives our members time to think about what they want to share. And then we take it live on the session, or they'll share it ahead of time for the several that do that in our community.
Yeah, I love that question. I do a blend of both of training and facilitation. And surprisingly, the feedback from my clients is they actually like more the hot seat facilitation, coaching, mentoring more than the formal training. And I think a big part of this is as you get more experience and if your clients are working with you longer term, you want to be able to adapt accordingly and dance with the clients of what their needs are. But if you're just starting out, you may need some training to get them all up to speed of your core principles and philosophies, and then move into the facilitation style there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. Well, another question. This is a really good one. I think that's valuable for everyone. Demisha here is talk more about market research to validate a product. What specifically are you looking for to validate if you're not actually launching the product yet?
Hmm.
This is a
You're probably validating the need and the pain points. Because if you're going to put a product out there or a program out there, it's to solve a problem mostly, right? Or it's to help in a certain area. It doesn't have to be necessarily viewed as a problem or a pain point, but there's likely a need that you're trying to address or a problem you're trying to solve. So the market research is making sure that your view of that is how your ideal client would view that. And that could even give you insights in terms of language to use, the words that they use. You might say something in one way, but you're like, actually, people don't really talk like that. So if I use that for all my marketing language, they'll be like, what does this mean? And by the way, I used to be a little bit guilty with that, in fairness. And that's funny because I used to do marketing, but I realized sometimes, with my marketing background and like ideation and all this stuff, I was like, but it has to sound like, really inspiring. But I was like, but people just kind of talk like this. So I think I just need to like say the thing and say the thing and like do the thing. So don't get overly fancy with it, but you could get a lot of good insights from that in terms of your packaging, your messaging, how you're framing the marketing of it, the outcomes that you want to achieve, right? Like if you're going to help someone in a certain area, what would they be hoping to get out of that? Like what would be a valuable outcome for them? That could all be things that can come from market research. Hopefully that helps you. Let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I know Demisha's looking to pivot in a new area. I think market research is very, very important to validate, understanding what their needs are in the market there. What else? If there's one more, I think there's one more question. I'm going to wrap up here. Let me see, what was that question here? Around tools and channels used to help with sales or delivery in the very beginning, as well as in community building. I'm guessing there's a bit of tech stack, a bit of
Mm.
question.
Yeah, I mean, my specific tech stack at the beginning was very simple. Like, even at the point where I was working with one-on-one clients at the beginning, there was no content portal. It was like Google Drive, Google Sheet Central, if you will. So, there was nothing fancy there. I think the most fancy thing I had was, working with ConvertKit at the time and now Kit in terms of my email list. But I was using social media and I had maybe like a link tree as like in my bios that people could access resources from, but it wasn't really anything more complicated than that. Now we use a lot more. We use obviously our content portal. We use Kajabi. And this is, by the way, like there's different schools of thought on this. This is just the direction I like to go with my COO, who is more the believer of use the platform that's best at what they do for each particular facet of your business versus like a one shop fits all model. So that's why we use different platforms for different needs. So we'll use, for example, Kajabi for our content portal. We use Slack for our community engagement for our active clients. We use Notion for our internal team communications, SOPs, all of that, which has been really, really helpful. We use Attio for our CRM. So there's just like different things that we're using. We still use Kit for our email platform, but we've gotten pretty used to that because each one serves its purpose pretty well.
Yeah, it's amazing. You have an amazing COO, your secret weapon. That's what I always.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a surprise to anyone, but he's actually my husband. So, yes, I get the question a lot, like, how is it working with him? My friends ask me that a lot. It's actually fantastic. It's ironic, if I could end on this fun little anecdote, Diana, because when we used to work in like different, like I used to work at L'Oreal, he used to work at one of Canada's leading retailers, and that was before he started his prior business and sold it. Like we'd get the question all the time, like, well, like why don't you want to like work together? Because his business that he was part of before was a family business. So I would get the question all the time, be like, don't you want to work with them? Like, no, I was like, oh no, no, no. Like we're never we're never gonna mix work and like personal. That's just a bad idea. And now the irony is that we actually work together and we work together really well. He compliments me a lot. He pushes me on areas that are not my natural instincts and I compliment him. So it's definitely a good working dynamic. And he believes in this as much as I do, especially when we're facing challenges and problems. He's like the biggest cheerleader I can have to get through it. So I'm very grateful for that.
That is so amazing. I think we need a couples mastermind soon because my husband is looking to, he plans on quitting his corporate job in April and he's going to come help me in my business as well and also do some consulting business. So I think we're going to have some a couples mastermind here.
I love it. Count me in.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for this. This was so wonderful. Just to wrap up here, everyone, this is, first of all, thank you so much for being here. This was such an amazing attendance today. I love seeing all of you here. And if you like this, I want to invite you to join our Coaches in Business free community. Victoria's going to share the links here. Is feel free to stay in touch with my latest events that are coming up. And also tomorrow we have the EFT tapping workshop with Jess Smith. That is a great one for you want to release any blocks and fears to open more doors to clients and sales. And then next month, March 27th, my next Coaches in Business Real Talk is we have our fellow coach and dear friend Maya Grossman here to talk about how to price, position, and plan for sustainable growth, which is on March 27th, 12 to 1:30 Eastern Time. We'll love to invite you to join us here. Victoria's going to share the link if you just want to RSVP, reserve your spot first. Love to have you again, and feel free to invite other fellow coaches as well. And Katie McPhee, who's here as well as my also fellow alumni from my mastermind, we're going to have you again as well to share your journey of how you also scaled your business to 7 figures in 2 years there. Amazing, amazing. Anyone want to open floor before I wrap up here? Just quick insights, ahas, what you found valuable today? Anyone want to quickly share before we wrap up here? This is so good today. We had a huge attendance.
Sure. Thank you,
Jason?
Diana. Thank you, Tiffany. Great session. Thank you so much. I'm so motivated. Some of the people in this audience may not have the resources yet to do a master class or to pay, for very expensive things like ICF. And I was wondering, is there any food for the brain that we can read or persuade ourselves in the right direction just to keep that North Star heading as one step at a time?
No, there are tons of podcasts. I think there's a lot of podcasts I would check out. That would be one, I would say. And then like books. I think there's like one of the books that I read the last several years was like Alex Hormozy's like $100 million leads and offers. I found that really helpful to help me think through my offers and lead generation. I found that really helpful there. You mentioned ICF. I know that's the International Coaching Federation. I'm actually not part of it. I've been a trained coach, but not a certified coach. It's not necessary. There actually are so many more I consider updated modern resources out there that you can take advantage. So I would even do a search on the podcasts and YouTube channels to get started, or even any like business coach out there like on LinkedIn to follow as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Victoria, what are some of your insights here?
Well, so I know Tiffany. So I met her at the mastermind last year in Cancun. So just huge breath of fresh air, great human, just poised and well spoken. She breathes in a lot about mindset. And I think at that time I was really struggling with where I wanted to go in my business. And she just really just poured into me. She recommended books, resources, and I think that the true gift about Tiffany is her ability to listen and truly care. Like she will be a listening ear, and even if like you've asked her like 500 questions, she's still sitting there, and she's still providing advice and she's still providing value. So, you're seeing the business side of Tiffany. I come from the care, the love, and how spectacular she is. So she's very near and dear to my heart. So I want to thank you, Tiffany, for what you're doing. You're amazing as a coach. Your brand's amazing. Your team's amazing, and I'm grateful to have met you and hope to meet you again from the
Oh,
States to Canada.
Thanks, Victoria. My gosh, I should have brought the Kleenex. You're going to make me tear up, but you're so wonderful. I appreciate you so much, as you know, and congrats also for your recent transition. It's so exciting and sending you so much love and success in what you're doing. It feels like you've totally tapped into your element.
Thank you,
Oh,
Tiffany.
thank you. I love how we're wrapping up with the love here. And I think this is a beautiful part of being part of a community where we can openly share. This is why the intention why I decided to create something like this. Building a business is not easy. That's the reality. It's not easy. But you can definitely, have fun and make it fulfilling and tap into each other's wisdom. I feel like for me, the last several years is I've really doubled down on just who I surround myself with. And it's allowed me to think bigger, dream bigger, step into my next version of me. And it's helped me now build this amazing network. Like I've been told many, many times by friends, coaches, colleagues that I'm a connector. I'm a super connector. I love promoting people, endorsing people, like Tiff and I I love referring her business. I just love that. Like people always tell me that. And so this year I'm double down on inviting all of you to be part of my community where I invite you to connect with one another, collaborate with one another so that you unlock new possibilities and partnerships and unlock new financial freedom as well. So thank you so much for being here today. I will love to see you at my next Coaches and Business Real Talk event next month. It's going to be a great one. And then we have another workshop tomorrow as well. So thank you so much, all.
Thank you, Diana.
You're
Bye.
wonderful.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Bye.